Okay, so everything should be fine now. I had to flush the entire system and reconnect to something completely different. So starting over, um, this is going to be a part two now slash three ish. Because I kind of deleted the other video because it kept. I don't like technology. All right, I hate technology for a very very fiery passion that I don't. I just not. So with with this video, and I'm gonna go and edit all of the subsections and everything else later. But what I'm gonna do right now is kind of talk about more in depth, or not in depth, but a little bit more about um, just different creatures and beasts and things that are portrayed as evil but actually aren't. So, getting into it, werewolves. A lot of movies and TV shows and books are going to portray them as like these big, monstrous, vicious things that just go on a killing rampage, right? But it's a little bit more than that. Um, and I'm gonna break it down between what they what they actually are versus how they actually are in books and movies and all, right? Because how you, in all honesty, you, especially in demonology stuff too, you actually have to look at it analytically. You know, like why why on any plane of existence would anything that's caged and backed into a corner be okay with being backed into a corner? You know, and I'm not talking about, oh, it's learning how to be submissive and all this other shit. No, it's if you as a person are backed into a corner and your life feels threatened, um think of it as a fight or flight. Regardless, you are going to make sure you survive. Um, and that's kind of about what visually it is. As far as like the movies and TV shows and all go. So it's more like in the Wolfman, right? And um he's strapped into the chair, and then the full moon comes, and he everybody except the psychiatrist sees him turning. What part of, again, being caged or trapped, do you really think that something like that is not gonna go kill the people who put it there? And it's it's like how with vampires too. If you try starving them to the point of they become the savage part of themselves, what how and what mindset do you think that's gonna end well for you at all? um like it's and as far as like the actual werewolf lycanthropy part goes too, and I'm not talking about the medical lycanthropy, because that actually is a genuine thing too. Lycanthropy is a legitimate medical um disorder. Same thing with some parts of vampirism, but that's going to be for later. So with a lot of the wolves that I've met and the ones that I know, it it kind of branches off. You can, whenever the full moon starts to come around more and more, they either get kind of like, not necessarily edgy, but they get on edge. So yeah, it's. I mean, it's a lot like with witchcraft too. Like it's a lot of the times it will be portrayed as satanic or evil or just overall dark killing shit that it's. I understand why, but it's tiresome. But the goddess Canella just posted, for those of us who are wolves, we are tired of these BS stories. The whole process of when and how we turn, what we go through, most people don't get it unless they know us, see us, get us. So exactly my point. It's the ones that I've met, like I said, it branches off. The closer and closer to the full moon it gets, they either get extremely on edge, they can get very, very easily agitated. Sometimes they just get angry to the point where it's like I either need to punch something or fuck something. And some of the ones that I met are also very isolated too. They just want to be alone. They don't want to deal with anybody unless they absolutely have to. So there's a lot of different things that in movies and TV shows that honestly they got right to a certain degree, but it doesn't make up for how much they've gotten wrong, or they've misled or anything. Because again, I get it. It's television. You want to portray things a certain way because people expect it a certain way. Get it. But at the same time, there's also a degree of lack of a better word, respect. And it's, if you keep doing the same shit over and over and over again, there's going to be a lot of people who actually do practice magic and witchcraft, and who are and consider themselves vampires or wolves or fae or whatever, that we just get tired. We get tired of the bullshit. We get tired of the whole, oh, you're not a real witch unless A, B, C, D. Or you're not a real witch unless you A, B, C, D. And all of those points are only in TV shows and movies. It's upsetting, and honestly, it gets boring. And again, to a certain degree, I understand why, but it doesn't excuse it. Like in all right, last week I brought up Harry Potter, so I'm gonna bring up Harry Potter again with the Mer People in Goblet of Fire. I can kind of understand their reasoning behind of why they portrayed the Mer People as what they were, but those aren't necessarily mermaids or mermen. Those honestly would be closer to I think kelpies or nixies. I think one of the subspecies of Mer People. Um, but my whole point is Mer People aren't just mermaids and mermen. It's a whole aquatic section. Um, and you can't you can't always expect everybody to portray them correctly or anything like that, which I get. But at the same time, like there's enough research out there to at least get some things right, you know like what they did with the basilisk. I'm pretty sure I brought it up last week, but hell, I'll bring it up again. The basilisk is one of my favorite creatures to talk about. But the only one I don't like what they did with is in Harry Potter. Because the only thing they really got right was its lair, where it resided, where it lived. And, it's depending on the universe and depending on how accurate you actually want to get, basilisks for the most part are serpent form, but they're not just 80-foot snakes. Like they actually do have very specific characteristics that can define them. And also they don't kill with their stare. They emit a toxic gas, or gaseous toxin, or however you want to look at it. But basically, they kill with their breath, right? And I was talking to somebody the last few days, and they were like, "Oh, well, if they can kill you with their breath, wouldn't it kill you instantly?" I'm like, not really, no, because look at how dragons are. They breathe fire, but not every constant breath is fire. They actually have to make the fire. So in turn, that also works with anything else, right? Um, like lions and cats and things, they don't just walk around with their claws out. It's they have to retract them, like vampires, cats, anything that has anything that they need to retract. It's the same concept, you know. Um, and it's always for me kind of frustrating, mainly because I am a demonologist and I do actually, for the most part, do my research as best I can. Because I mean, don't get me wrong, there is a lot of things that I might be wrong on, but it's also not me purposefully being wrong about them. It's just there's a lot of information out there that, again, and it's a constant thing with me. You have to also be careful because there is still a lot of misinformation out there too. Um, and it's do your research on the publisher, do your research on the author as well, and do your research on what exactly is actually in the book. It is what it is. Um, As far as going demon hunting, mm, demon hunting is not necessarily an actual thing. Um, but there are paranormal investigators out there. I personally know two or three of them. And it's it's kind of the same concept. When you're out walking, um, just anywhere, even just to the corner store down the street, if you actually want to learn how to recognize certain things or just kind of get used to what feelings are around you, carry a journal. Doesn't have to be big, it doesn't have to be overly large like this one. um it does not have to be this size. All right, it does not have to be ungodly large to where you have to lug it around everywhere. um just get you a little kind of pocket-sized journal like this. Mine just fits in my bag. But even if you're walking down the street and then you get overwhelmed with a sense of what the hell kind of shit is around, write down what you're feeling, write down the time, write down what kind of day it is, whether it's like what time of day, whether it's night, evening, morning, whether it's 7:02 p.m., write 7:02 p.m. And the more you write down and the more you get used to knowing the signs, you can be more self-aware of the kind of places that you not necessarily shouldn't be around, but also more kind of getting a sense of what's actually there, you know. um like how I keep saying, like, it's all territory based. It for the most part, it is all territory based, you know. Like, if you're one of those people that just goes hopping around to abandoned building to abandoned building to pretty much anything abandoned, or blocked off or just whatever, um one, eventually you will get caught. You will eventually get caught. And if you even so much as try to use the whole ghost hunting excuse, yeah, that's not an excuse. You will get arrested, because there are certain channels you actually do have to go through to where you actually do have permission to be on that property. Because think of it like this: everything is still private property. Just because it's abandoned, that doesn't mean you aren't trespassing. It's somebody still has property, whether it's city property or private owned. You still have to go through certain channels. Sorry, but but if somebody is coming to you saying that, I'm a werewolf, because I feel certain things under the full moon, or um I've always felt this way as a child. Never ever take what somebody says with a grain of rice. um but get to know them, actually talk to them, and see what kind of triggers, for the most part, they actually have for certain types of situations. And it's also not necessarily hard to find actual wolf packs or vampire clans, um, because it's. I mean, granted, yes, they are very much wary of outsiders, but just talk to them and see what each person's trigger might have been to be like, okay, so yes, this is who I am, this is what I am, kind of thing. Because anybody can walk on the street and say, oh, I'm a vampire, and just keep going along by their day. Especially here. But it's more the people who know or just assume that they're not gonna get asked more because they think, oh, I dress the part, or oh, I just have that that energy that I'm a vampire, or whatever. I'm like, it hell, I went to Catholic school in my life, and it was just easier for me to tell people I was a vampire versus, hey, guess what? I'm actually a witch. It's for me, it was just easier to tell people that I was a vampire because, one, I don't like mornings. I don't like mornings. Um, I don't really care about the sight of blood. Like, I don't mind it, and I'm usually also still feeling cold. Like, it's very rare that I actually feel hot. Um, but that's just me. Honestly, I'm pretty sure I've got. I Hi. I can't talk. But there's. I mean, there's a lot of reasons about why I am the way I am, as far as like the whole being cold thing goes. I'm pretty sure I'm anemic, but I honestly don't really care anymore. Um, but if you know how to actually talk to people and get to know people, um, coming from somebody who actually doesn't like people, um, but if you actually talk to people and get to know them and get to know why they are the way they are, you'll be able to figure out who's legitimate and who's not. You know, and if you get people saying, "Oh, I'm part Harpy and part Basilisk and part Siren," that's where my concern as a human being comes in. I'm like, um, first of all, no. Second of all, why? Because there's a difference between being a harpy and being a succubus and being a basilisk and being this and being that, versus having certain tendencies that those beings and those creatures might have. And let's be honest, most of them have gone extinct, if they ever still lived in the first place. Because I mean, it's playing devil's advocate, say there was a basilisk still running around. Say there were multiple. A lot of them, they'll still be smart enough to know how to hide and where to hide, unless you go provoking them. So there's that. But also, a lot of movies and TV shows will have you believe that, there's a griffin running around every corner. And I'm like, that's not necessarily how it is, because certain creatures and certain beings do honestly have a tendency to congregate, I should say, for lack of a better word, in certain areas. Like some, actually, no, I have it. I love books. So, here are some that prefer mountains. And each name actually has it where it's, where not necessarily originates, but where it started to come from, and it's called Field Guide to Demons, Fairies, Fallen Angels, and Other Subservient Spirits. Basically, it's a bestiary. And it's by Carol K. Mack and Dinah Mack. But there's creatures and there's demons and spirits and things that honestly actually do reside within your psyche too, and like Jekyll and Hyde syndrome, and like your id, ego, super ego. Like there's all kinds of different names for different aspects of what makes you you. So, and in lack of a better word, us as human beings, we are our own creatures in and of ourselves. We have our own reasons of why we do things, and that's why, honestly, looking at the psychological part of everything is going to be a lot more useful than just assuming somebody because of your past experiences. Like me personally, my past experiences will be different from somebody else's, and it's not that it's not that you have to go through certain things in life to be a specific kind of person. It's just that's how it's just how things happen. Shit happens. Sooner or later, you might get over it, you might not, but everything you do, every decision you make is what's going to drive you. And that does coincide with a lot of creatures, beasts, mythological beings, because for a lot of reasons, they're a lot smarter than we will ever actually give them credit for. Because, like I said, as a human race, we will always look at the monstrous side of everything before looking at anything else. And it's upsetting because it's you take one look at something and then you automatically deem them evil. That's just how it is. And all right, I'm gonna bring it up. The Witcher. All right, the one thing that show itself, as aside from the books and the games go, the one thing that show has actually done is they make Geralt specifically, they make him show the things, show the questions people don't want to ask. You know, like um, when humans drove elves pretty much to non-existence, when they pretty much drove them extinct. When when the elves captured Geralt, right? He made them understand that he is not human. Okay? Because if you keep, and even on their side too, if they keep deeming everything human just because it looks human, that's what's gonna fuck everything up in the long run. You know, um, because granted, yes, Witchers are mutated versions of us, but that still doesn't make them human anymore. You know, and it's, there's a lot of reasons human doesn't always mean human. Just like mortal doesn't always mean human, mortal doesn't always mean mortal. Um and it goes into a lot of misconceptions of why us as a species, as people, why we we prefer to assume versus question, because that would be humanizing something. You know, it would mean us understanding that that other creatures and other beings have their own agenda too. You know, um now granted, there are some that don't necessarily have a specific reason about why they do things, but it's more because, again, us as people, um we kind of just we kind of make it to a certain point that if you assume something too much, sooner or later it's just going to happen. And what I mean by that is, take, let's see, what do we want to do? Take the Loch Ness Monster, for example, right? Everybody, people are still trying to look for the my brain. To this day, people are still trying to look for Nessie, right? People are still trying to look for the Yeti. Bigfoot, and very few people question why something like that on that big a scale would just still kind of come to the surface, right? And it's it's not that I'm saying Nessie's real. I'm not trying to say Nessie isn't real, but look at it like this. There are hundreds upon hundreds upon hundreds of more people living now than there were 100 years ago. And as far as technological advances too, there's a lot more than we could do now than 100 there's a lot more we could do now than 50 years ago, you know. But it comes to a point where if you're really that hell bent on searching for something that really will not be found anymore, and you will not be closer to finding it now than hell even 10 years ago, then it's not gonna get found. You know, people and things go into hiding for reasons. Hell, that's why us as a human race made up the witness protection program. You know, and it's there are reasons why things go into hiding, why they evolve the way they do. Like in some myths and some legends, think like dragons. Okay, dragons in and of themselves have their own magic, right? They can do a lot more than we will ever think, right? What makes you think that they haven't learned how to evolve into human form, or at least take human form to not necessarily live amongst us, but hide in plain sight? You know, um, just like gargoyles, they can live in cities. You know, and I know some people are going to be like, oh well, we would see flying gargoyles roaming around. Like, not really, not if you don't actually know where to look. um because think in daylight, you'll be able to see them more than at night. And especially in a city, no one's worried about what's going on up there. We're more worried about getting mugged. So you got to think of it like that too. Like there's a lot of high rises, there's also a lot of cemeteries too, that gargoyles will go unnoticed just because of the fact of where they are, and also what time of day it is. That's why I'm saying always have at least some form of notebook on you. Hell, even put it on the notes in your phone. But I say get an actual journal because I'm old school. I like the pen and paper thing. But it's more of a knowing what to look for type of deal. You know, um, like it's if people are actually wanting to become demonologists, if they actually do want to even have some form of magical knowledge, it's a lot easier than what movies and shows are going to have you believe. Um, and it's really it's all about knowing what books to read and how to actually not necessarily go looking for them, but just knowing how to recognize what's there, you know. But I'm gonna call it for the night. I am going to have one more video just touching on this next week. Um, at I'm I'm probably gonna do it at 7:30 instead of 7. Um, but 7:30 Central Time next Wednesday, and it's not just going to be on um, demons and creatures and things. Um, Honestly, it's probably going to be more on the actual paranormal investigating side of it. Because I have had a couple of people message me asking, not necessarily for videos, but asking, how to start, where to go about it. So that's probably what I'm going to do next week. But I finally figured out a way to not have so many internet issues. So starting next week, I won't have to start a video, end it, delete it, and redo the whole process over again. But good night, and I hope you all enjoyed. See you soon.